this one to test. Yes, yes. Can you hear it? Okay, then try again. All right. Just a bit of testing. Can you hear anything? No. Test. Okay. Let's see. Okay, it's working. Thank you. Can we start? Apologies for the delay. It is Monday morning after all, so that's a bit difficult. Good morning, everyone. My name is Susanna Mas. I work as a researcher at the Applied Research and Innovation Center here at Mcast, and I'm happy to chair this session today for you. We'll start off with a short welcome address by Dr. Mario Cardona. All right, so anyone who's speaking can take off the mask I'm getting from the back of the room. So here's Dr. Mario Cardona, Deputy Principal of Applied Sciences. Thank you.
So hello, good morning everyone. It's a pleasure, but at the same time a huge responsibility to welcome you, because I can imagine that I have been invited to give this short address because the organizers know where I come from. That is, I look at the environment and also the cultural, not from a, how shall we put it, a neutral standpoint, but from a very politically charged view, in the sense that we, or you rather, that carry out research in relation to both the environment, the natural environment, so to speak, and also the cultural environment. I think we have a huge responsibility to gauge the state of things as they are now, and to speak the truth about the state of things as they are now. So what came to mind is not that it's not enough that we carry out research. I mean, it's very important to carry out research because we can't simply make arguments by, relying on our perceptions and opinions. We need research, because then that is what makes our argument sound, and arguments that can lead to political decisions. Because from the way I see it, that's my final aim. Some very important political decisions need to be taken. So it's important to carry out the research, but then it's important also to popularize the results of the research, and popularize them upwards and downwards and horizontally, in the sense that research needs to somehow then be translated into very important information. I mean, I'm really keen about the fact that Mcast now is really investing in research and taking it very seriously. At the same time, I think we need to find ways how to connect with the communities living out there and provide them with the research we are conducting in the different areas. And then obviously we need to push it also upwards and make the case for different political actions we believe need to be taken. Because I think as researchers we have a huge responsibility on our shoulders, and I don't think we can simply accept things as they are. So your research will give us the reliable information that is needed for people to push for certain political decisions, and for decision makers to make the right decisions, and the right decisions against obviously a benchmark of values which is continuously under attack, I think. So I think we need to be true to ourselves about this. Even the President of the Republic, Dr. Vella, has been speaking a lot about this, that we need to somehow see a little bit beyond our age, and also think about what kind of world we are leaving to those who will come after us. I have 3 kids, 2 are 18 and 1 is 20, and these 2 years have not been their best years in their lives, because on the one hand there was COVID that totally disrupted their school life, university life, their social life. But then concurrently, as if that was not enough, we had all this talk about climate change. So, the outlook for them at times, when they are a little bit down, the outlook is quite gloomy. But so I mean, we have a responsibility towards this generation, and they are not tomorrow's generation, they are today's generation. They are living now, today, so they can see the I would say the foolish decisions we are sometimes taking about our environment. They are seeing them now. The effects are being seen now and today, and now as we speak. So I think as researchers, what I urge you is to take your research very seriously, because it is very much needed, okay? In all the aspects that relate to our environment, the natural, the cultural, but also the social. And secondly, to focus your research in a way that will hopefully lead our nation to take some very important political decisions for ourselves, for the younger generations and the generations to come. I think we owe it to us all. So I really thank you for your commitment, and wish you well in your research endeavors. It is, I want to, make you aware that we really appreciate your research endeavors. They are very much appreciated. So thank you, and well done. Okay.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cardona, for opening this session. Remove the mask, sorry. So today, starting off our first session in environmental and cultural sustainability, we have Ms. Kimberly Terribile, who will speak about dolphins, whether they are on the increase or not, and how to integrate scientific and local ecological knowledge. It's here, so the floor is yours. Go ahead. I will give you a short notice when there are 2 minutes left, just to keep us a little bit on time. Good luck.
Good morning. Thank you for the introduction. I'm Kimberly Terribile. I'm a marine biologist, and I'm a lecturer at the Institute of Applied Sciences. I will be discussing dolphins. Actually, my study is about cetaceans, which is the order under which dolphins fall. But locally, we all refer to dolphins. And one point I will touch on is whether we just have dolphins or other species as well. The title continues that I will be integrating scientific and local ecological knowledge. It often happens that as scientists we do a lot of research which ends up in research papers and which stops there. Concurrently, we get other people carrying out or reading and gaining knowledge simultaneously, that is the local knowledge, and they often remain separate. So one of the purposes of this project is actually to integrate the fishers' knowledge and the scientific knowledge together, and to actually bring about a change for the benefit of both communities. So this very well follows what Dr. Cardona was saying, that we have to reach out both horizontally and vertically to as many people as possible. To start off with, this is in fact a collaborative project which I am carrying out together with the Department of Fisheries and Aquaculture within the Ministry for Aquaculture, Fisheries and Animal Rights of Malta. It is ironic that this project was started in collaboration with a student of ours. Ago. It started specifically in 2019 and it should come to an end in 2022, later next year. It all set off because around the world there are 87 living cetaceans. In Malta we have seen the common bottlenose dolphin, Cuvier's whale, Sowerby's whale, striped dolphin, rough-toothed dolphin, and fin whale. But that's not just it. The minke whale, the killer whale, and the false killer whale have not been found specifically in Maltese waters but have been sighted in the Sicily-Malta channel. And that gives rise to possibilities. So part of this project is actually informing the fishers of the current situation and any possible sightings, because as we are all very aware, the climate is changing and therefore we should be open for changes as well. There was a project that was carried out in 2014 and 15, and in this project, Migrate, the most commonly cited citation was the bottlenose dolphin. In fact, 38% of all citations were the common bottlenose dolphin. But this project is targeting dolphins. We're actually looking at the dolphins through depredation. What is depredation? Depredation is the act of a predator stealing or damaging prey items, which would have already been captured in another fisheries activity. So there was the fisher, he went fishing, he caught his bait, but in the meantime, some dolphin, some cetacean attacked that bait because it's its own prey and therefore caused damage. And this is where it all started from. Fishers are claiming that damage to nets is increasing, and they are claiming that it's all because of dolphins. They're taking it a step further. They're also claiming that such damage has increased in the past few years. So on one hand, we have the fisher who's experiencing decrease of catch, decrease in income, damage to nets, and the expenses that brings with it. On the other hand, we have the cetaceans and the sustainability of the population, because they don't just cause damage, they are sometimes caught as bycatch as well. So that's a problem in itself. And therefore, the aim of the project is to analyze these interactions that are happening between the cetaceans and the small-scale fisheries. In Malta, most of our fisheries classify as small-scale. Nonetheless, they are still part of the income, they are still part and parcel of a lot of people's lives. So the objectives of the project are, first of all, to understand what is happening, the status of the predation. Secondly, to provide mitigation measures. It is known that there are several effective mitigation measures that could be used to keep the cetaceans away without actually harming them. So if they are truly taking place, there are ways, sustainable ways, friendly ways of doing this, keeping them away as much as possible. This, what we're doing, this research is also part of a wider Mediterranean-wide research, which is concurrently taking place also in Sicily and in Spain. So our Sicilian and Spanish partners are also sharing with us their findings in an effort to bring about a change in our environment. This is based on 3 hypotheses on whether the abundance of cetaceans using trammel nets, as opposed to those who fish without trammel nets, will really make a difference. We are also investigating the use of pingers, which I will be mentioning as a mitigation measure, and the use of other deterrent devices and interactive devices. So in phase 1 of the project, we carried out several questionnaires in ports with the fisher themselves. We started with the local ecological knowledge. We investigated what the fishers think. We went into what fisheries characteristics they use, the gear that they employ, what do they use, what are their damages, what are their losses, what is their experience. We started at source. And we found that 76 of all fishers claim that dolphin encounters have increased in the last 5 years. Up to now, this is a claim. In addition to that, 42% of them claimed that they mostly increased, most of the depredation occurred closer to the fish farms. And that resulted in around 60% reduction in their catch, an average of 60% reduction in their catch, which is a huge amount. However, even though their catch is being reduced, the damage they claim to their fishing gear was only about 10%, which led to around €180 of damages experienced. Obviously, this phase of the project showed us that there is a need to closely monitor what is happening. How is this happening? This is something very recent, and we might as well consider using mitigation measures. Amongst the recommendations were that now we should take this a step forward, go on board and observe what is really happening, where this is happening and how often. We would also be providing the fishers with mitigation measures to encourage them to use alternative technologies which could also be helpful to them and to the population of cetaceans, including acoustic devices, and to continue carrying out these regular monitoring surveys. At the end of that first phase, we also shared our results with the Sicilian and the Spanish counterparts, and this report can be found online because it is freely accessible. It will also be published as a scientific paper in the next Mcast academic journal publication. That led us to phase 2. So most problems are happening to fishers who fish with trammel nets, most of them near the fish farms, most of them are experiencing losses. So we said, let's take it a step further, let's investigate the hotspots. What are those regions where we are continuously, repeatedly encountering cetaceans? In addition to that, let's investigate how they interact with the gear and therefore use mitigation technologies. But going back to what I said at the beginning, all of the fishers claimed that it was Tursiops truncatus, the common bottlenose dolphin, that was causing the damage, even though we saw that there are 6 commonly found cetaceans in the Maltese Islands. So we started off by preparing an identification guide, carrying out a workshop with the fishers themselves, and actually informing them on the differences in the cetaceans when they cite them, how to identify these differences, and how to report them. We are informing them on those species that are resident, continuously resident in the Maltese waters, on those that visit, and on those that have been sighted in the Mediterranean Sea and may possibly make a sighting quite soon. We also were going on onboard observations, these started last summer, with those fishers who have trammel nets. But not all fishers use the same trammel nets. Therefore, through MAVA funds, we actually purchased 15 trammel nets, which we provided to 15 fishers in order to have the same specifications, not to have a lot of variables. And we are focusing on the specific industry, on the specific set of fishers. These are the trammel nets that were purchased and that were given to the respective fishers. We went on board to try to identify these hotspots. So it first started off with going to the northwestern part of the island. We went to St. Paul's Bay and Meliha. Concurrently, there are also observations being carried out in the southeast of the island as well, closer to Marsaxlokk. In the first 5 visits that we went to, on the first 2 observations, there were no cetaceans sighted, but there truly were several holes indicating the predation in the trammel nets, while on the 3rd, the 4th, and the 5th observation visits, we actually sighted the common bottlenose dolphin. We sighted 2 of them no depredation was recorded in one case, while holes were reported in another. Because it may be that they are always attacking trammel nets, but because this may not necessarily be the case, we are also carrying out onboard observations with fishers who do not use trammel nets. And this is being carried out in these different transects. We are investigating hotspot locations. There is a resident population of common bottlenose dolphins in the southern part of the islands. They are always there. And we are also investigating the Jnejna area and St. Paul's Bay area in order to see what is truly happening. Are dolphins truly on the increase? These sites also, some of these sites also coincide with the location of fish farm areas. So we are also understanding whether there is a relationship there as well. Acoustic monitoring devices are used to actually understand whether any cetacean is present in the water. These are vessel-based sighting surveys. They are being carried out at the moment when the weather permits and when it's not very windy. Believe me, it's been very windy every time we planned to go on board. It is using a line transect sampling method, so we follow a methodology following a line transect method in order to be able to keep as much as possible to the same position. In fact, we are doing this in a very systematic manner. We record the GPS position, we record the temperature of the day, the depth, the conditions of the environment and the weather the previous day and the next day. So everything is very regular. Animal detection is very important. In order to explain what the next step is, in January we will start using the pingers, which are interactive devices, and the pingers will be used by the same fishers who are provided with the trammel nets in order to see whether there will be some change in this phenomenon. DIDs and DDDs are going to be employed. So in conclusion, the data that will be analyzed will not only be consolidated in a report, but will also be shared with our Sicilian and Spanish partners in order to understand whether this is a Mediterranean-wide problem or whether it is something localized. And we will also see whether there was truly a difference when we were not using pingers as to when we actually use any deterrent or interactive device. And we hope to be able to share with you the results of these outcomes in the next Research Expo. These are my references, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ribeler. Really interesting and nice pictures of dolphins, so that makes for a nice morning. Any questions from anyone in the room? Yeah, Alexia.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. It was very interesting. Just a very quick question. For the LEC service, what was your sample size? For the LEC service, what was your sample size? For the local ecological knowledge service, what was your sample size?
We interviewed 40 fishers from 6 different ports, yes. We will understand that locally it is very difficult for the fishers to actually engage and share their information. In fact, some of the results, in most of the results, there was the option not to disclose information, which many of them would opt for. But thankfully, we had 38 full questionnaires, which could provide us with a very good overview. Most of these are trammel net fishers, and therefore we decided to actually investigate the trammel net fishery in the second phase. Yes. We went in person, fully in person. Thankfully, this was the start of 2019 until January 2020, so it gave us time to do it in person. It would have been much more problematic. In fact, the identification guide part, it was meant to be done in person first. It was shifted online in March. When it was shifted online, we were not going to get a good enough sample to ensure that we are truly delivering our what we wanted to deliver, and therefore it was done again, thankfully, last November. So we were in time to carry out a workshop with the fishers and to be able to explain this. You're welcome. Any other question? Yes? Yes. There is a resident population. It's not a hotspot. So a hotspot is a region which is concentrated with a species because the environment is the right environment for it. When we say a resident population, it's because they are making it their home. The offshore fish farm location, when they were relocated about 2 years ago, they were relocated in the southern part of the island. So there is bait for them, there is food. So they may be making it their residence there because they actually find enough prey to prey on. You're welcome. Any other question? Yes? Okay, that is interesting. It cannot be investigated in this day because it is something that is ongoing. So thankfully, we started this study before COVID. It is continuous. We hope to be able to continue it in the coming years and to actually see whether there was a difference during COVID days or not. Apart from this, as a researcher, I can tell you that it seems that there were differences in biota experienced, particularly in the March to June period in 2020, at the very start of COVID, because anthropogenically we were not out at sea. So most people were not at sea, and therefore the environment was given time to replenish. What happened after that then was that most people actually started using the sea more than they did before. So now we went a step back than what we used to do. Well, it is something ongoing. I cannot give a definite answer about that, but it is interesting to know the changes before and after COVID.
Thank you so much once again. It was really interesting. I think if we want to continue this conversation, we can do so in the coffee break. We'll see you after that. Thank you again. So on to the next presentation, which is by Frankie Iguanes, Darren Sherry, and Juan Jose Bonello. I'm not sure who of you, both of you will present. That's great. So on their research project on using satellite data to assess pollutants and environmental events. I'll pass it on to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everyone. Actually, it was Mr. Bonello who's going to start, and I believe he sent the video, his recorded part. Mr. Bonello sent the video. If not, we can present it ourselves. No, because he sent it this morning to Massimo. Juan Jose Bonello. Okay, we'll send it. We'll start it ourselves. Okay then. Okay, thank you. So this is a collaboration across two institutes, the Institute of Applied Sciences, Juan Jose Bonello, our apologies, couldn't make it today, and Mr. Darren Sherry and myself from the ICT Institute. So the project is envisioned to use the European Space Agency programs, more specifically Copernicus programs, to monitor events of an environmental and pollution importance. One of our collaborations we have with a local entity, the Malta Resource Authority, is to map the land use and land cover. So one of their objectives, one of their tasks is to know the classification of land being used in the Maltese regions. And we have 6 classes: forestry, cropland, grassland, wetland, settlement, so that's built up area, and other land such as quarries and bare rock. And one of the outcomes from this would be a matrix, a change from one year to the next to know the kilohectarage shift from one class to another. So if we look at a sample study area, specifically the Shamshia area, this is a satellite image. And the current state of the art is that they use something called the Korean land cover, shown at the upper right area, which is highly pixelated. And at the lower right area, through the collaboration from the ICT Institute, we are showing a proof of concept of how we can improve this technology. And zooming in on the Shamshia Bay area, here we can see the Sentinel-2, which is a specific satellite from the program. And there, at the center, you can see the Korean land cover for 2018. What we should look at are the color classification, which is superimposed on the Sentinel satellite image, and finally, the more refined classification. With this proof of concept, we believe that we can offer a better service. So the reason why we need this is for various reasons: economic, social, and environmental purposes. So we presented this proposal. We are in the first phase, concluding the first phase, where we use the 2018 classification provided by the Malta Resource Authority as our ground truth, and we used our satellite data to calibrate and match those classifications. Once we finalized and calibrated our system, we applied it on the 2020 satellite imagery. Now, the problem with that is that we cannot do on-site observation, and therefore the second phase of the project, which will be starting next year, will be undertaking the same classification for the year of 2022, where any problematic areas in terms of interpretation of the classification, interpretation of the satellite data, we can do in situ observation. Thus, we can make corrections to our previous methodology, where we can either reduce the accuracy or even possibly improve. That is something for phase, for the next phase. Then we are going to use the full extent of the Sentinel-2 satellite data, which was launched in 2016, and the first full year being active in 2017, and thereafter, thus believing to improve the classification for every year. We would like to note that corrections are made to previous classifications based on advancements in technology. So here you have a quick overview of the methodology adopted. You have the satellite orbit. There are two satellites orbiting the globe in opposite phases, and therefore you have a total revisit rate of 2 days. The imagery is uploaded on the Copernicus hub within 24 hours, and what we do is we create a temporal data stack. What that means is we gather equally spaced images over a year, so 2-month intervals, for example. We also do manual annotations. What we are doing here is we're going at the satellite data and saying this is a built-up area, this is a cropland area. We use the temporal data stack and the annotations for the artificial intelligence. We use a supervised machine learning, where the model first is taught how to interpret the information in a temporal manner, and then it does its own classifications. Sorry about that. Finally, we do some refinements, and we come up with the statistics. Here we're going to show you a time lapse. So here what you're seeing are 6 images for the year of 2018, and you can in the Shamshia study area as shown before, you can see the changes in cropland, in the vegetation, going through the different seasons, and that is what we mean by a temporal data stack. What the model will do, it will not just take into consideration the pixel for one individual image, but how that changes over time. Then we also use the managerial maps, which are the official maps delineating each area and what they are actually classified as. And therefore, we use that for annotations. We use the temporal map, and then we get the model. Obviously, there are problematic areas, such as sun reflection and resolution. On the left, you have an image from a proprietary satellite image, high resolution but low revisit rate, refreshed every 5 years. On the right, you have this free Copernicus program satellite image with a lower resolution but a high revisit rate of 1 to 2 days. There are also misclassifications. On the left, you have a football ground being classified as a wetland because it is highly irrigated. Also, on the right, you have an area of the airport with high grassland area, yet the classification definition is that that is completely settlement, even the greenery, because that is private property. So certain manual annotations need to be, manual corrections, sorry, need to be made. Here you have one of our outputs for the year 2018, and here you have the different classifications. Obviously, you can zoom in to get higher resolution. We are looking at some key areas. This is the Shlandi area, I believe. Here you have the Shamshia area. You have that wetland, and this is bare rock over here, cropland and grassland. Here you have the manually corrected airport area with some quarries in the nearby, and that is what we can observe. From this project, we also were given an additional task to revise to see if there were any revisions in the footprint of the Maltese area. Here we chose a day when there was no wind, no sea movement, no waves, so much to the point that you can see the waves, the ripples from the boats. And also you can see different angles showing that one wave is not affecting the other. So that was the optimal point. Then every land area was given an identification point and the footprint was found. You can see even the smaller islands and rocks were taken into consideration. And when you add it all up, we revised the actual footprint upwards from 3.166 square kilometers, 116, sorry, square kilometers to a higher degree of accuracy, adding some additional decimal points. So that is a project that we are doing in collaboration with a local entity. We undertook some research with our students, most notably a study of the NO2 emissions and the changes during the pandemic area, which we are proud to say that we presented a few weeks back in the University of Luxembourg. So the problem is that NO2 emissions are a cause of concern for health, and also there's the EU directives that limit the number of times that a country can exceed the quota of 40 micrograms per meter cubed in a year. We would like to note that in the year 2018, 9 countries actually exceeded this limit. So in this case, we're using a different satellite, the Sentinel-5 satellite, but more specifically the precursor. So the satellite prior to the officially one to be launched, which is at a lower currently resolution and with less gases that can be detected than the final full satellite to be launched. A visit rate of once or twice daily, and what we did is we did a merge of data. So we had the Sentinel data, but as well as the World Air Quality Index data, which gets the data from the Environment and Resource Authority. Once we get that data, we do an aggregation for the WAI dataset, and we do a manipulation on the Sentinel satellite data, which we'll soon demonstrate. Then we do a correlation and a time lapse and a visualization. That was the first phase. So in Malta, NO2 emissions are done in 2 ways, both at land level, in an active and passive. Active by both by ERA. On an hourly basis, they have 5 stations, monitoring stations, and they cost around 200,000 to 300,000 plus the maintenance plus the analysis cost. Then on a passive manner, in 4 weeks, there are tubes costing €50 each, and they are spread across the Maltese islands. And they get very good and accurate readings. What we are proposing here is a third source of assessment using the remote, currently at once or twice daily, which is free of charge. Okay, so in order to do this assessment on a satellite level, we had to distribute, split the region into 3 for processing purposes. Each satellite product has roughly half a gigabyte. We gathered 235 products for the months of March, April, May of 2019 and 2020 to be able to do a comparison. Yeah? Okay. And that totaled 88 gig and approximately a full 24 hours of downloading. So here on the left you can see a level 2 satellite product. As you can see, it is misaligned slightly and it's also highly pixelated. That is for 1 day. As you can see, that is for the 19th April 2019. What we do is then we aggregate images for an entire month and we get what is called a level 3 satellite image, which is a higher resolution and also showing the alignment is corrected. Here now we have a time lapse. We have the 3 months of 2019 in comparison with the official report by the ERA. And you can see the concentrations. So here you have the port area with high concentrations and then very low concentrations in the Gozo and the extreme areas of Malta. And we can see that we have a very good correlation, a visual correlation with that. We would like to also note that the benefit of satellite, that the assessment is also done beyond the shores. And here we can see for 2020, and we can, okay, 2 minutes left, we can see that there is a far reduction. I'm going to have to speed up here. We have a correlation between our study and that by ERA of 98%, and we also compared our studies with that of other major cities. That was the first study. Then we created a hackathon. This hackathon spread in this year for 3 months, bringing in a number of entities where we encourage students to undertake research.
So basically, we're just going to go through very quickly the winners of the hackathon. These, we have to appreciate, they are undergraduate students. One of the projects was a remote assessment of Witfulia. For those who don't know, Witfulia is close between Zurri and Halfar. And through the news, it was basically a landfill. There was a time where it was actually used also for illegal dumping, but then in 2018, rehabilitation started. And over here, the student is showing us a time lapse of the changes taking place in this particular landfill, which confirmed that the actual, also working out the actual size of the landfill, today is being transformed into a recreational park. So this is a highly positive conclusion to arrive to as well. The second project, which I'm going to very briefly skim through, is a shoreline corrosion project by Mr. Leonard Bruno, where he took different factors into consideration and studied different, using Sentinel-2 data, like Mr. Nguyen has explained before. He took 2 different dates, okay, loaded the satellite data from 2015, I believe. He found a product just as soon Sentinel-2 was launched, and actually took a comparison between the difference in 2021. So a comparison of 2015 and to 2021. And this led to very interesting results, especially in certain bays, like this Fomirih Bay. As you can see, the red one would be the old coastline, and the blue line, I don't know how much visible it is the actual 2021 change. And the student also compared them to the ground truth. Same thing, Ramla Bay, marked deterioration, and especially also Samblas Bay in Gozo, which had a marked corrosion. So basically the conclusion is that using these remote sensing technologies together with image processing and AI, it is much more helpful to monitor, to inform, to also appreciate the changes that are taking place around us. Obviously, there's different other methods that are being currently employed this year using bathymetry to achieve an actual, a more refined result. Thank you.
Any?
Thank you so much for that. Really interesting. I think there's too much to say for just 15 minutes. I'm sorry about that. But I think it gives a good taste of the
Be used to actually measure algae, for example. Okay, so especially when it comes to water indices, vegetation, there's a whole set of what we call them bands, which can be used, not only visual bands, but also shortwave bands, shortwave infrared, near infrared bands, and other measurements which combined together would lead to such useful information. The nice thing of integrating technologies like AI technologies, etc., is that you can actually model something which us as humans would be very, very difficult and very laborious, that's the word, to work out. Yes, the resolution at the current resolution that we're working at is 10 meter by 10 meter. So that for 1 pixel. So 1 pixel is 10 meter by 10 meter. For Malta, that may be a little bit problematic. Even, for example, when it comes to analyzing vegetation, cropland, etc. What we then use, as Mr. Nguyen has mentioned before, is the temporal dimension. So even with 1 pixel, seeing how it is changing over time. Actually, we've got students at the moment doing such research where they are focusing a lot on the changes taking place over time to train an AI model to work such, segmentation areas or classifications. I think Kimberly? Okay.
for further discussion. Thank you so much, Mr. Nguanes and Sherry, and also Juan Jose from home. Sorry about the video, but all right, so thank you all. So now we'll welcome Mr. Michael Formosa, who will tell us more about his scientific study of the Maltese wooden balcony. Thank you.
Good morning to all. I'm a lecturer at ICA at Mosta. Okay, I'm also the coordinator for the course, which is dedicated to cultural heritage. By profession, I'm a conservator. I specialize in the conservation of the wooden supports of panel paintings, as well as furniture and wooden statues, etc. For me, this type of research was a very, very challenging one, because we're not talking about artifacts which are indoors. Okay, we have a structure which is partly exposed to the external environment, while the inside, okay, considering that most of our local balconies, they can be, they have a door which leads to other rooms, and when it is closed, it is obviously it's like a greenhouse. So the climate change from the exterior to the interior fluctuates a lot. This research is being carried out over a period of 3 years. I started last year, and eventually I started to collect data from my scientific investigations, and this will be later on analyzed, and also at the very end of the difficult thing to decide, okay, and also how to treat the local balconies. For example, you can have just a historical balcony, but then, as we will see, you can have other balconies which have an artistic value as well. So this needs to be carried out, to be dealt with properly. Currently, all the works, to my knowledge, carried out on local balconies, and yesterday the Marsamxetto ones were on the news once again, are being carried out by carpenters. And the supervisors are the architects themselves. But to my knowledge, as a wood conservator, having specialized in this material, which is quite complex, I was never asked for any information to be given. Okay, so I started by first carried out photographic and graphic documentation. Okay, I always emphasize that resources should be shared. In fact, some of the drawings were produced to me, not directly carried out by myself. Okay, I visited a model which is here at Mcast of a local balcony, and I try to come up with certain specifications used in local balconies. I also wanted to study the manufacturing techniques. For example, the one on the right is an exposed balcony. Okay, it dates back to the dates of the Knights. I remember once a client called me, and he called me not because he was interested in the balcony, but he wanted to make a new balcony, and he told me, listen, planning authority at that time wants a report about the condition of this balcony. From the picture, it looks in a very bad state of conservation, but the most damage is only aesthetic one on the paint layers. In fact, I decided that this balcony should be repaired and fixed back in its original place. We can see balconies which have, we can see here, with artistic values and some moldings on the inside, not just a common carpentry framework. Okay, and something which is evident, quite evident, and also some architects are really worried about is when they tell me, for example, I'm going to talk about the balcony at the President's Palace in Valletta. Okay, it has been there, most probably one of since the beginning of the wooden balconies, way back to the date of the Knights. They do conservation works. They carry them out 2-3 years ago, and now the damage is also already evident on these the restoration, let's say, treatments. What is the reason for this? I'm still investigating. Most probably they might have been using different species of wood, different technologies as well, and I also suspect that the wood moisture content might have been different than the original artifact at the time of the repair. For this balcony over here, which is at the Admiralty House in Valletta, one of the most beautiful balconies I've seen in Malta. First of all, it has, apart from an artistic value, we can also notice that the doors, in fact, instead of having hinges, they simply slide in and slide inside the balcony itself, and you can access the view better. Okay, but this was restored about 2 years ago, and as you can see from the ceiling boards, okay, there's already movement of the timber. I'm not blaming the person carrying out the restoration treatment of various parts of the wooden balconies, and it seems that larch is one of the most types of wood used. I also found out that larch in my master's thesis about local sacristy furniture was used throughout almost the 18th and 19th century. Okay, it is a very resilient type of wood. Okay, and the second picture I put it there on purpose. Why? Because when you investigate, for example, you want to investigate the paint layers, most of the time the balcony being restored would have the external coatings stripped off or removed or fallen off, so you cannot actually identify the original color, the original application on the exterior. While here we see this was a flake of paint, and it was just one white on one side and green on the other. Okay, and the client told me this was just painted once green, and then it was painted white. But then you can see that there are various levels of green. So by investigating internal coatings, okay, and we need to be really careful from where we take samples. Okay, most of the samples need to be taken from corners where I am sure that the paint was not stripped off. Okay, I can have, for example, here 12 coatings. So most probably when the person is restoring the balcony, repairing the balcony, painting it from the exterior. Most of the time they are doing it from the inside as well. So here we have an indication of how many coatings they might have been applied. And by visually seeing just two colors, it doesn't mean that they are just two applications. I'm also monitoring the deterioration, okay? And due to our weather, we have mold and fungal deterioration, okay? Obviously, when you have an area which is severely degraded by fungal deterioration, it is quite obvious because it is darkened. And as it progresses, you will start having cracks perpendicular to the growth, to the grain of the wood. Okay, but at an early stage, you can also find hypha inside the cells of the wood. It does not mean that it is there. It is causing any harm. Most of the time, it causes harm and concern inside the cell. And you will obviously understand that when you have perforations, you have some degradation of the wood itself. Normally, when I do this, I also carry out density tests, meaning that I take the sample, I take a piece of sample which is sound, I compare the densities, okay, and by that you can sort of quantify the amount of damage there is. I'm doing various tests. I'm using for the first time heat-treated wood. Okay, what happens is that they put the planks of wood in an oven. Okay, then they heat reach a temperature of about 200 degrees centigrade. Okay, there needs to be oxygen taken out, otherwise they will get by fire attacked. And then most of the time I also did some tests using salt concentrations to try and find out the behavior of wood. And there is quite a lot of different characteristics between natural wood and heat-treated wood. Okay, I'm also started to prepare some simulations of paint layers, fillers, okay, using 4 different orientations representing the two tend to, I had the impression that it was black, the color, which attracts more heat, but red in color tends to deteriorate much more frequently. At the end of the research, which is going to be next year, okay, I need to analyze the data collected, okay, identify common biological, physical, and mechanical degradation. I need to try, and it's not very easy, to try and stop the degradation. Okay, for example, when you have metal corrosion, you may try and use a metal which is less reactive to changes in relative humidity and temperature. By the way, I'm also carrying out environmental monitoring, where I'm monitoring relative humidity and temperature on the exterior, inside the balcony, and also on the interior of the house, so that I can compare the results. This is also a very delicate issue, and that is why I'm talking to all other experts in the field, such as making interviews to craftsmen as well, to know what they're using, how they're using the products, what methodology are they using, where they trained to do such works. And eventually, I would like to come out with some ethical protocol on how these should be tackled. My study would not have been possible without the assistance of Mcast, first of all, and secondly, from people who gave me access to visit the wooden balconies. Are there any questions?
So I'm sad to say that I have just decided to paint my Maltese balcony red. What can I do to... No. What can we do to... Yes.
Inferior to other paints, unfortunately, and they tend to flake. One of this Belgic in particular was restored 3 years ago, and there's already flaking paint. And if you take a look at the Grandmaster's Palace on the other side, I think St. Christopher Street, and look at the old paint. Okay, it used to be a lead paint, which is to be more resilient. There are not such differences and the damages caused to the paint layer. Remember that once the paint layer is damaged, you start having fungal problems because water will start to penetrate.
Thank you so much. Any other questions from anyone in the room? Okay, I'm just going to see quickly if we are continuing because we ran over time to see if we continue now or later. Okay, so since we are continuing, I'll keep you a little bit longer. Apologies for the delay that we built up. Sorry, we're waiting for the final presentation. If it's there. Myself, Suzanne Mas. Okay, perfect. Thank you. So yeah, a bit weird to introduce yourself, but I already did, so I'll continue from here. So my name is Suzanne Mas. I work at the Applied Research and Innovation Center here at Mcast. And today I'll present a little bit of the work we've been doing with the EIT Urban Mobility Hub. I'll explain a bit more what that is. It's not a research project per se, but it focuses more on fostering education and innovation in this field. So we still thought it was a nice opportunity to explain a little bit the work we've been doing in that field. I don't have the clicker. I don't know if they gave it back, but you can go on. Thank you. That's great. So this network that Mcast is part of, the Applied Research and Innovation Center is one of the local partners, is part of a European network called EIT, the European Institute for Innovation and Technology, which was set up by the European Commission to try to promote innovation in countries around Europe. It brings together actors from different corners of what they call the knowledge triangle, so different stakeholders in the field of research and innovation, so companies, research centers, universities, but also working directly with users, with cities, with NGOs, and with the general public. So there are several knowledge and innovation communities that the EIT has set up to try to address specific societal challenges that Europe faces. They started with a number of communities around 10 years ago. The first one was Climate Kick, that we are in fact also a partner in. And there will be a presentation about that tomorrow by my colleague. But as you can see, there are different fields in which EIT is active, so trying to promote innovation on the ground in countries like digital, food, health, energy, raw materials, manufacturing. And the latest one that has joined this club of communities is on urban mobility, so sustainable mobility in cities. So this is the innovation community focused on addressing the mobility challenges that we see in our countries. I'm sure I don't need to tell you anything more about that. I think many of us experience that every day, trying to go from home to work and back, but also to create more livable spaces. So not only to address, let's say, the congestion, the traffic, the pollution, but also to see how cities can be more livable, more enjoyable places, as more and more people are actually living in cities. You know, cities are growing around the world. So this network focuses on bringing together different actors to try to come up with solutions for these challenges, while also engaging directly with the cities and the citizens that this impacts. So the network is made up, as I said, of actors from different sides of, let's say, the innovation spectrum. So both the more traditional ones, so knowledge institutes, universities and research centers, but also cities and industry. So there are a number of very big players in terms of the cities. There's Barcelona, Milan, Stockholm, Amsterdam involved with industry. There are partners like SEAT and Siemens. So this is a network bringing together quite big players in this field. So the network, let's say, focuses on the main mission, but then through different activities. So the main mission is to foster innovation, to improve the quality of life and decarbonize mobility, especially also in view, of course, as what we have discussed before already, climate change and the contribution of transport. So that, for example, in Malta, the contribution of land transport is around 40% of the carbon emissions. So a big challenge to tackle locally as well. And they do this through different activities, more like academic research and education in this field, but also trying to foster innovation and business creation. So trying to promote startups and companies coming up with solutions and putting these into practice. In the City Club, this is more where they then work directly with cities to try out innovative solutions in practice and see how that works. So the network is crossing all of Europe, but there is specific attention, let's say, for countries in Southern and Eastern Europe, which they identify as RIS countries, Regional Innovation Schemes. So these are countries that by the European Commission have been determined to be modest or moderate innovators, so where there is still a push needed, let's say, for more innovation. And to that end, they have set up several hubs in these different countries to try to promote research and innovation in this area in these countries. And as you can see, there is Malta as one of these hubs, and this is what I'm presenting today, our work that we have done this year with this hub. So the hub in Malta was set up last year in 2020 in response to the creation of these hubs in these identified areas. And it's a collaboration between three partners locally. So there's Project Eagle Foundation, an NGO promoting sustainable mobility, Mcast as the academic partner, and then Valletta Design Cluster, which falls under the Valletta Cultural Agency, more on the innovation side. And also they have hosted many of our events in their beautiful venue in Valletta. So we work together as three partners to try to build up this network locally. Obviously, we do that work in the ecosystem of mobility providers, users, and enablers. So actually, one of the activities we did this year was an activity with stakeholders to try to determine who are the players in this field locally and who we should be interacting with. So you can see that here. So a real focus on the users of mobility services, so the people making use of different mobility providers, the providers themselves, so both from public transport view, but also new mobility solutions that we've seen coming up in the last few years, like ride sharing and shared cars, bikes, and then the enabler, so the infrastructure, the financial support, and the research and funding behind that. So as the hub, our role is threefold. So both raising awareness with the general public and with the stakeholders that we work with, fostering education and innovation in this field, and also building a community where people can exchange this knowledge and work together. So then I just wanted to show a few examples of the activities that we have done this year. So for example, one of the major awareness raising campaigns we did was with Love in Malta. We did a week-long multimodal mobility campaign, so focusing on all the different modes of transport that are available in Malta, how they connect to each other, what are the challenges still there and what are the opportunities. We had different speakers from Mcast, from University of Malta, from Malta Public Transport, and from some of the mobility providers like Cool and Rota, for example, the bicycle advocacy group. We reached a big audience, over 300,000 post reaches and almost 5,000 engagements with people. So this was a big campaign to try to make this more discussable and see what people think on this topic. There were polls and articles where people could react. So it was a big success to engage with, so let's say, the general public and especially the younger public that Love in Malta attracts. We also did a symposium together with Transport Malta during European Mobility Week, a yearly week focusing on mobility organized by the European Commission. We focused on the theme of this year, which was how transport impacts health in Malta. And I mean, this was also the European focus of this year. Obviously, focusing a lot also on the insights that we got from the COVID period and how our relation to our public space, our urban environment changed for a lot of people, how people rediscovered their own neighborhoods, but also saw the benefits of less traffic and less pollution in their cities. So this was held physically at Mcast, but also live streamed. So also a hybrid event with around 14 speakers in 3 panel discussions. So it was a very interesting discussion and yeah, showed us that there is still a lot of work to be done, unfortunately, on this topic in Malta. So that's to be continued. Then apart from that, we also, as the hub, we are also like the local representatives, obviously, of this European network. So we share information about opportunities for researchers, for entities. So for example, there are a lot of opportunities for startups. We did information events for Mcast to explain what it means that we are the hub here and how researchers or lecturers can engage with this network. We also recently presented the master program that is a cross-European master program organized by EIT Urban Mobility. So yeah, spreading the word about these different opportunities throughout the country. We also did a number of events where we try to foster education and innovation in this field. So for example, a training event where we discussed ICT applications in mobility. Obviously now that in the mobility field there is a lot more data being collected both through our personal devices, so through our smartphones or our cars, but also on the road through integrated sort of travel systems and data collection through smart cards and even on the road with CCTVs. How to use all that data to then analyze. Okay, you can continue. It's fine. Yes, yes. We also provided support to a local startup that is trying to come up with a new solution for car sharing. So not exactly the car sharing that we already have, but enabling car sharing between different families or friends living in proximity. We organized 2 focus groups for them to help them to better understand their market and the specific challenges in Malta, because this is a Europe-wide startup. So Malta was identified as one of their sort of first pilot areas to test. So we helped them to better understand the market and the customer segments here. And finally, also we've been working with the Valletta Design Cluster. So this is one of our partners in the hub, and they are based in Lower Valletta. We are helping them to develop a green travel plan. So this is a sort of environmentally friendly plan for any organization, any entity, university campuses or bigger businesses, how to encourage more sustainable mobility of the people who to their areas. And this is something we are working on now. So first to develop this green travel plan for them, but also to build up experience and knowledge with this methodology to be able to help other organizations in Malta to do that. So at first it is an analysis of the current situation, so of mobility services, of the routes that people take. We did a questionnaire also with the users of the space to understand how they travel, at what times. And then there will be a set of recommendations as well, how to improve that, both recommendations they can themselves implement and also recommendations that would need to be discussed with authorities like Transport Malta or Malta Public Transport. And this is something we're looking forward to taking further once we have the first pilot report ready to see if we can implement that in other organizations as well. Okay, I went already over the map. Let me speed up a bit because we're already so late, so I will not go through everything. We did a number of outreach events as well, like, for example, the Freshers Week here at Mcast. We work also directly with key stakeholders to try to encourage them to take up new projects or see how we can help them. So Transport Malta, Malta Public Transport, as well as several other government entities. And I wanted to say a little bit about what is in store for next year. So every year the network EIT Urban Mobility opens innovation calls where they receive proposals for projects. This usually, the submission time is usually around May. So currently, the call for proposals will be issued, I think, in January. So they are currently preparing to see what sort of stakeholders want to get involved in coming up with proposals together. So we will also support locals. Actually, Mcast will be involved this year in a number of projects in a massive open online course, and another one where there is a sort of matchmaking between industry partners and startups to sort of further promote mobility solutions that they have come up with. And that's all. Thank you so much for staying here, even though we went a bit over time. I hope we can all still grab a coffee in the coffee break. I don't know if there's any questions, but also feel free to discuss later during the coffee break. Thank you. Okay, I wasn't aware about that myself, but just informed that anyone who's watching from home can obviously also engage in questions and answers through the chat, and someone will be answering them. We hope so. Okay, that's great. So thank you also for joining from home or elsewhere. Thank you all. See you later.
Hello, hello. So good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us. Those of you who are joining even on the online platform. During this session, we're going to focus on looking at different aspects relating to both the environment and even cultural sustainability. And I would like to introduce a colleague of ours, Mr. John, the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So basically this year I will be focusing on two lines of research. The use of biodegradable plastic mulch in Maltese agriculture. Okay. Basically what is a mulch? Mulch is, in agriculture, is this black plastic film that is applied on the soil surface before planting, and then the crops are planted in it, so that it will suppress weed growth. Okay, that's the main important aspect about it. There are other things that the mulch will help also. Basically, more on the preservation of water, because it preserves, it lessens water evaporation from the soil. A long life cycle, like for example strawberries, aubergines, bell peppers, okay, and even tomatoes in summer, especially. Next slide, please. Okay, this mulch, unfortunately, is used only once. Okay, once for every crop. Then afterwards, it is collected from the soil and dumped in landfills. Okay, so this is creating a lot of waste that ends up in landfills, unfortunately. So the idea was to promote lower than the maximum permissible. Next slide, please. Okay, sun, so solar radiance and heat of the sun, temperature, and the content of organic matter, because the more organic matter is present in the soil, the more microorganisms are present, so they will be needed to be collected. Okay, so the farmer can just rotovate the mulch in the soil. It will disintegrate and decompose in the soil without leaving any residues. Next slide, please. Okay, so the objectives is to provide information to the farming community about the effectiveness of using this biodegradable mulch, okay, in their cultivation instead of using polyethylene mulch, which is the most commonly used at the moment. Its cost effectiveness, so comparing the costs of the usual polyethylene plastic with this biodegradable mulch. And the one important aspect also is to reduce the impact of waste of this mulch, of the polyethylene mulch, and by using biodegradable one. Okay, so basically, we can go to the next slide as well. So basically, this will be a field experiment. Okay, this will be carried out. Okay, whatsoever. So bare soil. Second one will be with a plastic mulch, the polyethylene one, and the third one will be a biodegradable mulch. And I will be comparing these three for different measurements. Next slide, please. Okay, so basically, I will be focusing on yield. Height of plant in centimeters, which will be taken every week, the stalk diameter, and one important result will be the water use efficiency. Okay, so by comparing the yield with the amount of water which is consumed. Okay, I will also compare the leaf area. Okay, using a particular type of software. Soil temperature, which will be recorded once every day at noon. Okay, so because soil temperature has a great influence on the growth rate of the plant, so that is why I'm going to take it as well. the amount of water which is taken, which is applied to the crop, and finally the percentage visual deterioration of the biodegradable mulch. Okay, because it's very important that the biodegradable mulch will end until the crop is harvested. Okay, it must not disintegrate or be biodegraded before the crop has finished until harvest. Okay, and for the irrigation, I will be using soil tensiometers, which basically sense the amount of soil moisture in the soil, so that the amount of water applied will be sufficient for the crop to produce and grow in a good manner. Okay, so that was the first one. The second research areas will be the use of mycorrhizae, so in Maltese agriculture. And the scope is basically in Malta, if we see statistics, the main production of agricultural crops is in summer. And unfortunately, this happens when we have lack of irrigation, lack of water, because it's in winter, which is the rainy season. So there is a huge demand of water for irrigation in Maltese agriculture. So and unfortunately we have water scarcity. Okay, lack of fresh water sources, salinization of our water table. That is posing challenges on our agriculture. So what are mycorrhizae? Mycorrhizae are fungi that normally grow in agricultural soils. Okay, so they are normally there. Basically, they infect in a good way, infect the roots of plants, and they carry out a symbiotic relationship. Okay. Why? How? By extending the rooting system of the plant. So it's like an extension of the roots. And so what will be benefits of this mycorrhizae relationship? First of all, better nutrient uptake, better water uptake, better resilience of the plant to salinization of the soil, and even makes the plant more resilient to drought conditions. And these mycorrhizae are commercially available, so you can inoculate the plant before planting the crop in this to demonstrate to the farming community that mycorrhizae can help mitigate water scarcity, especially in the summer months, and also improve productivity. But raw way will be just used to determine the amount of irrigation water that will be applied. Okay, because in the other rows B and C, they will get 20% less water than raw A. Okay, so raw A will be just to understand the amount of water which is needed for the crop. Okay, the correct amount, to determine the correct amount of water needed, while in the other rows they will get 20% less, so that I can determine if mycorrhizae, these are the usual ones, so yield, height of plant, stalk diameter, water use efficiency, and leaf area of the plant, but also some important parameters which will be used as well. Okay, using a leaf spectrophotometer, I will be determining also the chlorophyll content inside the plant, because there is a strong correlation between the amount of, the levels of carotenoids inside the leaf. Okay, but where the greater the levels of carotenoids, the tubers. Okay, in three categories. Irrigation water will be determined using soil tensiometers, even here. Okay. Irrigation will be using T-tape irrigation system, the same that is used in normal agriculture. Okay, here in Malta, and irrigation will start here after soil ridging when the plant is about 1 to 2 weeks after the plant emerges from the soil. Okay, the inoculation will be using this product MycoApply, which is a mixture of mycorrhiza, okay, of the glomus species, and they will be first applied on the seed before planting. So it is sprayed on the seed before planting, and then another application will be via drip irrigation during the first irrigation of the crop, and that will inoculate the plant with mycorrhiza. Okay, that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, John, for your plans, research plans. And we look forward to seeing your results in the near future, because it's what we do, applied research, and that gives results to the people ultimately. Thank you. I now would like to invite Dr. Mario Balzan.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I will discuss with you the assessment of climate and environmental risks for the Mediterranean ecosystems, with a particular focus on the terrestrial ecosystems.
As the weather sets new records, climate scientists say such heat waves are likely to become the new normal in the coming years.
Les phénomènes météo extrêmes se multiplient. ويعد تغير المناخ أحد أكبر الأخطار التي تهدد التنمية على مستوى العالم.
Introducing this assessment, which was carried out by, could we move on to the next slide, please? Which was carried out by scientists from all over the Mediterranean region and beyond. And in this assessment, we wanted to evaluate and assess the current risks associated with changing climate and with changing environment. So there have been a total of 190 scientists from 25 countries involved in this. So this is a massive exercise, which was supported by the United Nations Environmental Programme, MAP, Mediterranean Action Programme, through the Barcelona Convention. And here is the front page of the report. It's a book which is this thick, which is basically composed of a number of chapters, a number of assessments carried out on different aspects. I was involved, and I was leading the chapter of the assessment on ecosystems. But there are other assessments and anyway, I was involved in this from the very start. If we can go to the next slide, 20, by the Council of Europe, because of, you can see a part of the team, basically they're the lead team receiving this award, which is this award there. because it has brought so many experts together in a complete assessment for the region. Okay, please. And this is the part I was involved in. I was leading with a colleague of mine, Abed Rahman Hassoun from Lebanon, this team of experts from all over Europe. If you can see there, you have many countries. And we were looking at the assessment of the impacts of climate change on ecosystems. The work has been ongoing for years. Now the report is finalized, but there's still some work going on. And we looked at the assessment, at the impacts on different ecosystems, so very comprehensive, going from marine and different types of sub-ecosystems and so on. Coastal, we looked at the current condition and the past trend, so what has happened over the past 30 years and even longer, what is the current situation, and then what are the projected vulnerabilities and the risks, and what kind of adaptation is needed basically. And so I don't have time to go through all the results. This is a short presentation, but to give an idea of the extent, this is the terrestrial ecosystems along the Mediterranean basin, and some key results. For example, the first graph on your right hand side showing the population in areas basically decreasing, so the availability of raw water, of course, is a key issue in our region. The second figure is showing the reduction in freshwater discharge flows in rivers and aquatic ecosystems, and you can see how this has declined constantly from 1960 onwards, basically till the year 2000, and this has impacts, as I'm going to show in the next slide, the slide after that. It's very difficult to present results. I'm just presenting some of the key results. It's about forest. I mean, we can show simple changes like the previous graph, but this is a more complete assessment, for example, for forests or for woodlands. You can see how a changing climate as a consequence of increased greenhouse gas emissions means that you have decreased precipitation, extreme drought events, and extreme temperatures, increased temperatures, and length of heat waves, and how this eventually results in changes within the ecosystem. You can see this on your left-hand side. So you increase the evaporative demand, increase crown defoliation, increase tree mortality, changes in the phenology, and so on and so forth. And eventually this results in changes within the ecosystem. Forests die back, reduced capacity to recover from disturbances, and so on. Eventually that has an impact on human society, for example, because of the benefits we get from these forests. So the reduction in carbon storage, reduction in the release of water to downstream environments, overall reduction in certain products like timber and wood that we get from forests, reduction in or increases in soil erosion, and so on. So there are complex responses which have to be categorized in different parts of a chain, which you can see here, and which we are doing through this. We have been doing through this literature review, which is now being expanded further. If we can go to the next slide, please. These are some of the main outcomes of this assessment, which is now being extended forward through a systematic review, considering all those ecosystems that we had mentioned in the previous slides. It's no secret, we can say that biodiversity changes have been happening at a very fast rate, and they are more significant when compared to some of the other regions in the world. In the northern Mediterranean, you have increase in tree cover. In the southern, because of abandonment and restoration initiatives. In the southern Mediterranean region, you have still things like deforestation and overexploitation of forest resources and so on, and also overgrazing, which is, so basically you have two different trends happening in the northern part of the Mediterranean and the southern part of the Mediterranean. Overall we can say that there is an increase in drylands, which is significant. Drylands are important ecosystems, and in fact, as we have seen in the previous slides, we have considered them in our assessment, but the dryland cover is projected to increase. 40% of the fish species living in Mediterranean rivers are threatened with extinction due to a reduction in river flows. Okay, so you can see the numbers are really large. There's a lot of data about this from different parts of the Mediterranean, showing also some regional differences. But overall, we can say that with a 1.5 degrees Celsius warming scenario globally, we can have up to, we would expect up to 40% increases in burnt area, and with a 3 degrees Celsius warming, we would expect up to 100% increases in forest fires. So this is the last slide. It gives you sort of some of the main outcomes of this report. In the next months and weeks, we are developing this further to a systematic review, where basically we are looking at more systematic evidence of environmental risks associated with climate change in the Mediterranean region. That's it from my end.
Good afternoon. I'm Clint Kalea, first of all, from ICA. I'm going to discuss the development of pandemic art. And this research is divided into two parts. Today I'm going to discuss the first part, so between 1300 and 1900. This research was inspired by the current situation we're in. I was curious on how artists problem, because since there was no iconography related to this subject, they had to invent the iconography themselves. But as always, artists will look at sources of inspirations, and there are various sources of inspirations which the artists used. The first source of inspiration was theology. Before 1347, the idea was that once a person dies, he will stay in a state of unconscious existence, and then his judgment, whether he's going to heaven or to hell, will be decided in the last judgment. But then the papal bull by Pope Benedictus XII changed this idea, this eschatological idea, and he stated that once a person dies, he will immediately be judged. So, 10 years after this papal bull was published, the bubonic plague emerged in Europe in 1347. So, it created a lot of anxiety amongst Christians because now repent their sins. So, there was this anxiety and that they will die what it was called a bad death. So, in order to ease this anxiety, the papal bull started to emphasize more on the importance of the purgatory. Before this papal bull, there was a huge debate on whether it existed or not. But this papal bull, in order to ease this, and the clergy will pray for those souls who died from the bubonic plague. And this started to create also the commission of religious images. Saint Roque, which are the most important saints. Next slide, please. So I'm going to discuss first Saint Sebastian. This is a triptych representing his martyrdom and various events from his life, but the most important sections of these works are the middle one, which is showing his martyrdom, and Christian widow managed to put him back to life. Then they beat him to death. So, why is Saint Sebastian important? Because his life, he didn't experience any pandemics, but the way he lived was similar to how Christ started him. The first one with arrows will become very popular in plague iconography because the symbol of arrows to represent punishment, divine punishment, became very popular. At this time, they didn't know what was the cause of the plague, so they thought that it was a divine punishment. And this idea will take 600, 700 years to be changed. It will be changed when they will discover plague are always a sign of a divine punishment. Next slide, please. This is part of the same triptych, which is showing a scene from a plague in a city. This is another painting, a panel painting, which is representing a lot of things here, which will become very common iconography for plague images. Up here we have Christ and Saint Sebastian again. So Saint Sebastian is praying for mercy to Christ. Then we have a cityscape, which will be very common in plague imageries to show the event where it's happening. And here you have a demon and an angel striking their weapons as a symbol to symbolize plague. And below here you have it's the how quick the plague spread and killed. This is another plague saint. He's very popular in Malta. We have also cemeteries dedicated to him. Saint Roque. Saint Roque used to go and pray for mercy amongst plague-stricken people. He was infected by the plague himself, the bubonic plague, and he escaped into the forest, and he was healed from the plague by an angel and kept from starving by a dog, which became the two main symbols, iconographical symbols of the saint. It was emphasized that the symptoms of the plague to be shown, and to be shown clearly. Great plague iconography was what it's called the Golden Legend. It was a hagiographical book. It means that it was a biography of the saints. It was written by Jacobus de Voragine. So you have a number of stories about the lives of these saints, from which artists used to take a lot of ideas to represent plague accounts from classical eras. So here I am showing a part of Homer's Iliad, which is describing a plague which was an act of punishment by Apollo himself. And I am showing this because of this part, okay? Shot his arrows. So even during classical period, the shooting of arrows was an act of punishment by gods. Next, please. Also, in biblical accounts, it to be included a lot. Here, we are seeing these angels shooting arrows and the Virgin protecting a number of them. So this means that if you pray, you will have more chance to survive the plague. Next, please. Here again is Giorgio Vasari's altarpiece. We are seeing God himself holding three arrows. And down here we have Saint Sebastian and Saint Roque. Okay, next please. It's the reverse thing. It's the God ordering the plague to stop, because the angel here is sheathing back his arrow, his sword, sorry. Okay, so he's not striking, he's retreating. Here we are seeing also again these two angels. Okay, the good angel is ordering the demon to strike with his lance. And again here we have a clear indication of the Black Death symptoms. Next, please. And again, similar to the one we have just seen, here the good angel is ordering the bad angel to strike his punishment. This is a much later work. But they thought that even the air, the polluted air, plague events could infect other persons, what it was called miasma. And to show this, the covering of the nose was the best method. It derived from another iconographic, religious iconographic story, the story of Lazarus. If you see paintings about the story of Lazarus, the raising of Lazarus, you will always find someone pinching his nose. Another important iconographic element is the dead mother with, and we are seeing them again here by a painting by Poussin, a man pinching. This is an effect of the Council of Trent, so religious stories. And they set a number of rules for artists to follow. One of the major rules that they wanted artists to follow was the element of decorum. Okay, so from now on, we rarely see the symptoms of it. There was a huge battle between the Roman Catholic Church and the Protestant Church of the North. And is here baptizing an infant, okay? Because the Protestants, one of the major, huge painting created by Gros, a French artist, a French neoclassical artist, representing an event which happened in Jaffa, where during one of these Napoleon missions, the army was struck by the plague, and they were demotivated. They didn't want to fight. Christ invited him to touch his wounds from plague iconography and started to diminish. And here we are going to England. It's to indicate and to give sign to the people to get out their dead relatives from because himself had to escape his country due to a pandemic. Here he is representing the plague as this skeleton on a monster flying along this. It passes. Next, please. This is, I think, the last one. Klinger. It's 1903. I told you I'm finished 1900, but this is an important work I couldn't not mention. This is like a hospital ward where a number of plague-stricken people were being healed by these nuns, and suddenly this air, this wind opens these windows, and that's all. That's the first part. Hopefully next year I will talk about the second part. Thank you.
Thank you. Very interesting applications of, and very, very relatable to what we're experiencing now. It's also interesting to see what will happen out of this period. Just to those of you who are viewing us from their homes, this is a reminder that the sessions by Andrew Cortez and Christine Zerafa will be transmitted later on via online.
Hi, all right. Suppost qiegħed jidher. Hello?
Can you hear us now?
Iva,
So-
nista' nismakom. Minnaħa tiegħi kollox okay?
Yeah, perfect. We can see your presentation. I think
Grazzi
that the
oħra.
setup is ready and we're ready to go.
Tajjeb. Okay.
Awesome.
Ġili qed nara minnaħa tagħkom, però minnaħa tiegħi tajjeb qiegħed?
Everything is sorted from both ends.
Okay, okay. Mela, thank you very
Thank you.
much.
See you soon. Ciao, ciao.
Thanks, thank you, bye.
Can you
Hello.
hear me now, Christine?
Okay, I can hear you. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, perfect. Can you just try sharing your screen, please? With the
I will.
presentation.
I hope it's fine because Andrew is currently sharing his, but I will try.
Yes, it's just to test basically. We need to
Yes.
confirm that there's communication both ways and you can share your screen. I think we're good to go. So at
Okay, let me just enter
30.
slide show. So I'm just testing the slideshow mode. That's
Right.
okay.
Perfect.
Alright, can you see it?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much then. That was quick.
See you soon, Christine. Ciao, ciao.
Thanks a lot for everything. Speaking of that, so 1 second. I'm right after Andrew.
Yes, you're at 150, 215, sorry.
2:15. Okay.
Yes, at 2:15.
Excellent.
So
Alright.
at 2:10 or 2:15, I'll request you to join. I'll send you a request to join.
Okay, so you will call me basically.
I'll request you to join, yeah.
Okay, thank you. See you later then.
See you later. Ciao, ciao.
Bye.
We're just setting up. You're recording, perfect. We'll cut it. Yep, this should be good. I just need to do the other way around. Go to presentation. Perfect. So, hello everyone. This talk is the title of this. Stephen Rilo. You have the microphone.
Water consumption data. I will be presenting this talk in conjunction with Dr. Alex Rizzo, Engineer Christian Camilleri, and Engineer Stefan Riolo. The data used in this project is available online from a public data set. Different problems arising. For example, you have apparent water losses, which are difficult to measure, and water meters can become increasingly inaccurate and tends to underread the consumption data, the actual consumption, leading to difficulties in understanding the exact consumption of a particular household. So, in order to use water data, we're going to present them as a time series. Data preprocessing will be demonstrating using R. And finally, we would like to present a Shiny R application. So, as I described earlier, water meter readings are described as time series. A common pattern, a common trend is the daily trend. For example, at particular times of the day, such as 3, 4 a.m. in the morning, we tend to see a lot at 4 in the afternoon. And this kind of, so that we can get to the actual differences and water consumption information that is more relevant to us. For example, what we see here is a time series of water consumption data, top left. So on the top left, we see so in order to remove the trend, a very typical method is to use a moving average. This is top right. As you can see at the top right is smoother and ignores, in a sense, the daily ups and downs. When detrending from the original data, we end up with that instead of the typical consumption increasing, we've removed that increase and we're left with differences between the original data and the trend. And at this point in time, it can be easier to notice the daily trend. So bottom left, we notice that we have ups and downs in our consumption. That is the seasonality that I was speaking about earlier. Of course, seasonality plays an important part in our time series and can be removed as well to leave the variations, the final result that you might want to analyze at the very end. So, bottom right, looking at the data from the bottom left, we extracted the seasonality. And once again, removing the seasonality from the original time series to the residues at the very end. It more understanding the data more. For example, based on the first user in our data set, we are able to obtain what are known as quantiles. In this way, So for example, in this case, the thick red line in the middle, that's the median. And we can see consumption up to the 95th percentile, which is the light red ribbon. So for example, you can notice the upward and downward trends of water consumption and the expected range of consumption at different hours of the day. Very visible that somewhere around 4 a.m. in the morning, we typically experience very low water consumption. However, water consumption is increased throughout the main part of the day with different ups. What we would like to find using this information is the presence of extreme water usage, extreme consumption. And in this case, we can use, for example, these quantiles and try to plot the quantiles over a particular time series. So for example, here, we're seeing that looking at different days, some particular quantile, so a high quantile, and a lower quantile towards the bottom. When we look at the differences of the data points against these quantiles, we might be able to detect what are known as outliers, or in other words, in our case, extremely high or extremely low consumption. So, having seen this, I'd like to present an application that allows us to interactively view this data. I'm adding an extra attribute whether that particular hour is close to mid. So that brings us to our conclusion.
Very interesting project indeed. Please, our remote attendees, no questions, but you can follow.
Have a good day. Thank you.
Can.
Please. Title Gigging for Living, Supporting Creative Solutions to Sustain Artistic Work in the Gig Economy.
Key action to project. It actually came about through a special call last because they were open by COVID-19. And this project was awarded because it addresses important aspects in the performing arts specifically. So yes, Gigging for Living, supporting creative solutions to sustain artists working in the gig economy. I am coordinating from our institution at Mcast, and I've got the support of another musician, Christine Vella, and also Moritz Zapan Stokle, who is a dancer and also a light designer. Both Christine and Moritz are lecturers at the ICA. What is a gig? Maybe not everyone knows what a gig is, but it's shorthand for engagement. And it used to be specific to music. We are addressing all professional musicians or performing artists who actually perform to earn a living. So we are used to seeing full halls. This is actually me performing back in London, and this is a reality. This is not me, but this is a reality we're not really used to seeing now with the COVID-19 situation. So this is the COVID-19 reality that we are now facing here. And this project specifically addresses such freelancers, and having experienced the reality as a freelancer, I can only imagine what my colleagues have been through. In fact, I've got a lot of colleagues with whom I've collaborated, who amazing musicians who perform with top orchestras of the world, top opera singers who unfortunately ended up one day you've got a full diary and the next day you've got an empty diary, not twiddling your thumbs. So it specifically targets musicians, dancers, and actors. How does it support? It will help them to develop business skills so that this supports them to build success. What are the outputs of the project ultimately? There are 3 intellectual outputs. The first one is obviously has had a significant impact with the pandemic. It's not just, the pandemic affected all of us, yes, we know that, but suddenly being faced by a crisis of not being able to practice a set of resources that will be made available to performing artists and a community of practice, also about raising awareness out there in the community. So we at Mcast are specifically focusing on the first intellectual output, the first transnational meeting in Ireland. And what happened in Ireland is that different groups of dancers, singers, a training event was very much about sharing ideas and gathering thoughts. That's why I did the term focus groups, because it was about understanding the business reality for performing arts in the pandemic economy and identifying training needs for business skill development. And ultimately, the final output is has changed the market. So firstly, the first objective was fashion. What impact did COVID-19 have on the performing artists? We have already mentioned mental health. So they've been affected by shows, they've been isolated, and the lack of income. So the monetary effect has been significant. Secondly, the lack of motivation. Those who are not performing artists cannot really understand this, but if you don't have. The third one is establishing a sustainable profession. It was very much focused on how to really go out there with a quality product, being a good musician. A good point is the exposure versus income. So this is a significant point, because we all know that once the pandemic started, performers reverted to social media, online platforms to keep their identity going. So they perform, they video themselves, or they got someone to video, and it was put up on social media, and people got used to watching things for free. So performers kept themselves active. And even today, speaking to really established artists, they tell me, I'm still faced with challenges. People still expect us to perform for free. But hey, yes, the pandemic has hit us hard, but we need to get paid. And the solutions are ultimately to explore new professional opportunities. Other aspects, briefly, is how to discover new ways to interact with audiences, moving online, improving digital. Here are a few quotes that were highlighted in the workshop series. Basically, everyone taught really how to manage our finances. When you're in a conservatoire or in an art school, no one teaches that to you. So, yes, understanding how to manage your finances, management skills, and that all feeds into the self-confidence and self-respect, because once you get an image, you are building an identity, a stronger identity. You need people skills to expand your network. What the project is about, as I said, it's still in the early stages situation. So the network on these business skills, how to improve on your marketing skills. So basically all the aspects that we mentioned here will be addressed in these brochures, if you will.
the agenda, what we on how we learn. Okay, and as you can see over here, AI is being, you get recommendations. That's probably AI in the background recommending things to you. Chatbots, I'm sure you've chatted with a chatbot, right? The idea behind talking to someone and that someone is actually a bot, right? And they've done real learning happening whilst we're discussing this. Okay? At this point, we have 3 layers, but real world structure 3 layers, right? A mathematical model, right? It's not magic. So AI is not magic. It's just a mathematical model coming up with numbers in order to detect patterns. Okay? And eventually there's the output, right? So we feed the model the input, an image of a cat, for example, or an image of a dog, and eventually you will get an output. Is it a cat or a 2 external inputs? And it is very, very good at finding patterns that are too complex for being manually extracted. Okay? So the input, okay, you have an image handwritten digit 2. So 2 in this case is the one which is, you see 784 inputs over here. It's because this image, to us it's an image, right? To us it's just black attempt. So we have be fed to a single node, right? So the first part over here is fed to this one, the second one brown, which visualizes how neural networks learn in a very good way, right? I highly recommend it to go through it. Okay, next. So it first starts by understanding what I'm drawing. Right? So at first it sees a door, then a remote control about the door is. So as more people, if you next, I want to introduce you to convolution neural networks. Again, I'm not expecting you to understand in full how this works. I'm just giving you some information so that you will understand the next part of this level. Okay? So SENN is a special type of NN, so we still have that structure. We still have the input, the hidden layers, and the output layers, but the mathematical and basically within the visual cortex, different cells respond to most of it. Okay? So in this exercise, we're going to create a model, a CNN model, to classify cats and dogs. We're going to use a data set, which is a very popular data. Okay? Class 1 would be cat, class 2 would be dog. Different quality and right? And the same applies for dogs. Right? And that's a very important aspect when you train a model. Your data needs to be varied. Okay? So it has to, okay, which is very cloud-based Jupyter notebook. So it's like you code it on the cloud. Okay? And this provides a free GPU. Right? So this gives us a free GPU, so we can actually use their GPU for free. Okay? By the way, we need GPUs because in deep learning we need. Alright, so this is just to demo. I'm just going to go through this Jupyter notebook, which I have prepared already. So over here, in this case, in the first cell, there is no output because in the first cell we'll simply importing the libraries, but eventually, as we go along with the pace and so in the first, right? Again, you are not expected to go through the code. It's another 1,000 to train the model. No. What we usually do is we randomize the data set. So if you have 1,000 images, you would randomly change the order of it, and then you would simply take the first 80% for training and the remaining 20% for testing. Because for the layers with the image, right? First, we're creating a convolutional layer over here with some parameters that I will not go into. Then we are creating a max pooling layer to simplify the output. And we're repeating that process, we're creating two more, and finally the output layer, which is just one node. Right? So the more image the data set, so we are changing the data set a little bit. Right? So for instance, we're rotating each image. So the validation accuracy, okay, starts at 59.4, okay, 59%. Then in the second epoch, right, so we have 67, then 63 again, 70. In the meantime, we have the model checkpointer, which is epoch. As you can see, the accuracy was bumped from 59% to 75%, so that's quite great. So as you can see, let's focus on the green and the purple one or the red one. So as you can see, the loss increases over time, over the amount of epochs, and the accuracy is increasing over time as well. That is what we want. Okay, it seems that the model is learning. It seems that the model is doing great in the next epoch. Parameters, hyperparameters, we call them. So this is just a basic model, just to show you what. Then what I've done is I went through all the images in the testing set, okay, the validation set, and I'm calculating how much correct cat and dog images that we get. Right? So basically I'm loading each image and then using the model, which is this line over, right? The accuracy, the average accuracy is 0.75. It's very, very naughty, very active, and the model did well at the class. Right? We added some more versions of that same data, then we prepared the model, trained the model, we evaluated the model. It's a computer vision task, so that's why we use the same. It doesn't really take train and one day. So the next part, which will not take very long for this project, is first we build the data set. Right? So as you can see over here, we've taken a lot of images for valid and invalid parts. Okay, so we are assuming this is a valid part. Okay, changing the position to model, but in this case 16. Prepared in step 1 to train and test. I wanted to get the robotic arm over here to demonstrate this to you, but the process was a nightmare, so I decided to take a video and show you the process. So you can see this is a valid option. So we execute the program and simply discards the order. Okay, so this is a very simple, is a spam classifier within your mailbox. Right? So this simply scans the text in your mail. There are words that would lead to being materials. Okay? The first one is a basic introduction to CMNs, a very good one. This is the GitHub repository to Google. It has a lot of educational stuff which you might want to use. Could use. Data augmentation, how to use deep learning when you have a limited data, there's a machine learning crash course, which is very good. And finally, intuitively understanding convolutions for deep learning, and a simple introduction to. So basically, that's what I had in mind. I hope this session was useful. So, a very good application for in a factory, for instance, rather than having a factory worker visually inspecting a part, okay, you can actually have a robotic arm to sort the items. That he wants to serve, and then based on what the recipe of the day is, the robotic arm will how sure is it for 0.8. Weights are, these lines are called weights, right? They are assigned random numbers. Okay, so what happens is the first input is given, and summa to the next happens is this process is called back propagation. By the way, back propagation is you would have to the model does a back propagation. That's what you do, right? It basically measure